common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
We've got Professor John Yoo, of course.
And we've got some more questions to ask.
Yeah, boy, do we have a lot of questions. President Biden and also the vice president saying that they want to change essentially the Constitution. They want to do an amendment because they're not happy with Supreme Court decisions.
They haven't made the decisions that they're happy about.
Right.
So they want to change democracy. And I want to ask, is it Dr. Hugh or Professor Hugh?
Professor Hugh.
Professor Hugh, tell the American people, what does it take to be able to change an amendment to affect the Supreme Court? Is it just a congressional vote, or what is it?
John, could I just, I was in Congress when John Yoo was in the Justice Department. He is an absolute genius. He is a man of integrity and just a great, great person. John, this is Pete King. I want to thank you for your years of service. You're phenomenal.
Oh, thanks, Congressman. It's great to be back with all you guys again. Actually, President Biden is delivering the remarks right now at the LBJ Library in Austin, Texas. And I think it's a perfect place to explain why this is a terrible idea, because he's there because of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And the 1964 Civil Rights Act would never have happened if it weren't for Brown versus Board of Education, in which the Supreme Court overturned segregation. Do you think that the Supreme Court justices would have overturned segregation if all the laws that President Biden wants to put in the Constitution now existed at that time, if justices had term limits, if they were subjected to a code of ethics by Congress, if they were being attacked for their judicial independence? Would they have the fortitude, to make decisions that would be unpopular, but which are there to protect minority rights? That's, I think, the important question here. That's why the founders gave the Supreme Court justices lifetime tenure. So to answer your question directly, what does it take to do this? I think it takes a constitutional amendment. I think President Biden doesn't think so, but the Constitution says justices get their jobs for life. If you put 18-year or whatever term limit on them, I think you have to amend the Constitution, which means you need to get 2/3 of the Congress, both House and Senate, and 3/4 of the state legislatures. It's the hardest thing to do.
So bottom line, it's very hard to do, almost impossible in this day and age. So bottom line is he's smoking.
Blowing smoke.
He's blowing smoke.
Well, John Yoo, it's Richard Weinberg. Good to talk to you again.
Judge Weinberg.
That's right. Professor Yoo, Judge Weinberg. Good to talk to you again. So
yeah, great to hear from you.
So, John, what you have here is another political gambit. All he's doing is making noises to have an issue. So one of the campaign planks of the Democratic Party is to attack the Supreme Court of the United States because they don't like their decisions. Isn't that what this is all about?
I think it's all about the decisions. If the Supreme Court hadn't decided Dobbs, which sent the question of abortion back to the states, hadn't decided the Trump immunity case, which I think was triggered by this over-aggressive special counsel, then I don't think they'd be talking about this. And I don't think this is something Republicans do. Republicans didn't like the Supreme Court deciding in favor of gay marriage, but you didn't hear Republicans talk about imposing term limits on justices or subjecting them to ethics reviews. I think this is really an example, I hate to say it, of a progressive agenda to attack our other institutions, like getting rid of the Electoral College, adding more states like D.C. to the Senate, getting rid of the filibuster, and now attacking judicial independence, which is our last line of defense for the Bill of Rights and our constitutional liberties.
In addition, the other thing he's trying to do is give the students the
student loans.
John, I want to raise this.
Go ahead, Judge.
John, in today's Wall Street Journal, one of the lead editorials talking about, Biden's been trying to give away free money to buy votes by waiving the debt. Now you have the Secretary of Education of the United States writes a letter on governmental letterhead attacking the Republicans for not supporting his initiative. Isn't this a violation of the Hatch Act?
And explain what Hatch Act is. We know what it is.
I just heard about that, and I was surprised he did that. So the Hatch Act says that if you work for the government, you're not allowed, when you're working for the government, to engage in partisan political activity. And the idea behind that is you don't want people in office abusing their powers to get like a Democrat or Republican reelected. And so, yeah, cabinet secretaries are not supposed to make political appeals.
And using government government resources. Yeah. He's using letterheads, government resources, a misuse of government resources as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a serious Hatch Act violation. Now, there's not a lot of – you rarely see the Hatch Act enforced against important people like cabinet secretaries. But this is something, again, that's what elections are for. I think that really is what the Hatch Act is for, is to publicize these kinds of violations so people can take them into account when they decide who to vote for in November. It's really a president has to make sure.
And, John, the other thing –
don't cross the line.
The Secretary of Treasury comes out today and says she needs $78 trillion.
Yeah, trillion.
$78 trillion to comply with what she believes should be
tackling climate change.
Yeah, I mean, where are these lies coming from?
Here's actually why I think this attack on the Supreme Court is part of this broader effort, a progressive effort. And this is because the Supreme Court has been the last line of defense to stop abuse of executive power. You want to talk about the excessive lockdowns, the vaccine mandate. You want to talk about the Biden effort to cancel all the student debt in the country. Congress could act, but they don't. And so who's left to make sure that the president doesn't abuse his powers in this way? It's been the Supreme Court. So it's only natural that progressives now want to attack the court because they see it as the last restraint on advancing, I think, a fairly radical agenda.
The only thing else I can think of, John Hugh, is the fact is that they're blowing up, they're blowing smoke in the ears of their party for them to make more contributions. Yeah, let's give more money, make sure they win, and they can do this.
Yeah, I think the short term, obviously, is to unify their base behind Kamala Harris. You'll notice Kamala Harris came right out in support. In fact, Kamala Harris earlier said in the 2020 campaign, she said she wanted to pack the court and add more justice to it till it changed its mind. But I think there's a longer term goal here, too, which is they're trying to intimidate the Supreme Court. They are attacking the justices, just like FDR did back in 1936 when it tried to oppose his New Deal, which did, I think, a lot of harm to our constitutional system. And
absolutely.
Now they're doing it
They're
again.
Trying to scare the Supreme Court.
Yeah, they're calling them extreme. I mean, at a time where they've also, by the way, one thing we haven't brought up, they've had threats. Think about the threats. Remember,
Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh had an assassin.
What about
show up
Schumer
his
going
home.
to the steps of the Supreme Court and calling out the justices by name?
Yeah, it's dangerous. It is so dangerous. Well, thank you so much, John Yoo. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you. Such an important topic.
Thank you, John.
I love joining you guys anytime.
Back to school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination.